So this one, I wanted to point out the shooting star. Now they grow all over the world. All different species of shooting star grow all over the world. But and we have them all here. This picture I took on the left was up at Table Mountain, and they grow like crazy up there. They're just all over the place up around there. And I wanted to tell you about the way the shooting stars are pollinated. They're only pollinated by bumblebees, and bumblebees, they do what they call buzz pollination. And they run up there, they attach their mandibles and their feet to the end of that little pod, and they don't produce nectar, but they do produce pollen. And when the bumblebee is looking for pollen, it opens up that little, when he hits a certain vibration on his wings, the pollen all falls down onto his stomach, and then he goes on, gets part of it for himself and goes on from there. So I thought really nice, and you can find these in the catalogs. They sell them readily. I've seen them in the nurseries too. They're easily transplanted. They grow happily all the way up from the alpine regions down into the lower areas. So let's see. Okay, the Montane ecosystem. Now we're getting on down to around Easton, Ronald, Cleellum in that area. Between Snoqualmie Pass is about 3,000 feet. So down around here area, your subalpine firs, Engelmann spruce, and larches. We have high plateaus here. And I just kind of wanted to show you a lot of the different things. Now, the Western Mountain Ash, we have it here. It's a large, well, you could call it a small tree or a large shrub. It gets to about 16 feet tall. And the fruits are edible, but they're really bitter, but they're good for the plants. And you see it's got a white flower in the spring, and then your orange berries in the late summer. And on over here, the vine maple, it's all through our woods here in Cleellum. If it's understory, it's going to be a multi-stemmed shrub type of a plant. But if it's more out in the open, then it's going to be more of a much taller tree. It's it gets to be about 15 to 20 feet tall as a tree. And it can come with one or several trunks, and they're very malleable for pruning and shaping in the yard. They're very, very beautiful plants. And then, of course, everybody's seen the yarrow because it grows everywhere, along the roadsides, along the railroad tracks, everywhere. But there's so many different varieties now. Then I just wanted to point out that there are, I grow them in my own yard. And so I can answer any question about them. The little paprika, it's only about 18 inches high, where the coronation gold's a good 3 foot tall, much bigger plant. But they're very, very, very hardy. You can put them out on the very edge of the landscape. Once they're established, you never have to worry about them again. They'll just grow forever. So everybody wants more color. Another interesting, I wanted to tell you about all of the plants, you guys, but I'd be here for hours and hours and hours. Pick the one. So the fields of Indian paintbrush we see around here in our open meadows. It's kind of exciting. And if you are a gardener, I know that you've got something in your car, your back pocket, that you could just bring a sample home. Well, the Indian paintbrush, believe it or not, turns out to be a symbiote. It needs to grow on another plant. And they really, the botanists, we think that we can fly something on Mars, but they still haven't yet figured out why it wants to grow, what it wants to grow on. This here, I see it grows on buckwheat here, but they figured out down to where it seems to fancy grasses, legumes, and these composites like this buckwheat. So if you If you find Indian paintbrush, be sure that you get its host along with it or it won't survive. And then red flowering currant, this is another really beautiful plant that goes in everybody's yard. It's just here in Clayellum, it's just starting to open up its flower heads. And it's about, it gets to be 6 to 8 feet tall, depending on its location, how happy it is. It's very common from the lowlands all the way up to the higher elevations. Okay, so now we'll step into the Ponderosa zone, and again, it's where all the Ponderosa pine trees dominate. The reason that we have more Ponderosa pines here, it depends on fire for its dominance, and the reason for that is it has a fire retardant right in its bark. Obviously, if the fire is hot enough, it's going to take it anyway. But generally, if a forest fire goes zipping through, most of the tree will be all right. So the Western starflower, it's ground cover. Its botanical name is Trientalis, which is 1/3 of a foot in Latin. So, and that's about how tall it is. It's about 4 inches tall. It's a member of the primrose family, and I was just out in my woods today, and I was looking to see if the starflowers were in bloom, and I discovered that I don't have any this year. Instead, I had a bear, and the bear made himself very, very evident, but in other ways. But I didn't realize. But they have a very nutritious bulb. It's also called an Indian potato, even though it's a small bulb. But the bears dig them, and so anyway, and then the checker lily frilarias, they grow in the open fields. I have several big patches of them that just appeared, and they grow all through here. In fact, all of these pictures are really in my property. The Western spirea also grows next to the creek. It's a bush that it blooms like in this red all summer. And it stays on in the wintertime. So if you do want to transplant, you can even find it. So, but it's the native spirea. And then the lady slipper orchid. I was so pleased to discover we had a lady slipper orchid on our property, and there are some other, I've talked to other master gardeners that live around in this area, and they are scattered. They don't know much about the lady slipper orchids. The seeds are so microscopic that they're just blown by the wind, and they require a certain type of mycorrhizal fungi in order to germinate the seeds. And nobody's been able to do it, that they've been able to do it yet. It's all in the wild. A lot of them now, I've seen them in the catalogs, the specialty catalogs, for lots of money. We're very fortunate to have them in our woods, but they do not transplant well, unfortunately. And but if you, I would guess if you got them from the specialty catalogs, that they've grown them in their transplant medium, and that should be much better than digging them up and plopping them down somewhere else. So